Welcome to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast, where you get unconventional insights into wealth building and retirement that actually work. Discover data-driven strategies and learn from a wealth of experience so that you can take your retirement to the next level. Now, here's your host. He was once bitten by a harbor seal, the income engineer, Kraig Strom.
Okay, we are back on Personal Pension Radio, joined on the phone by Michael Jeandron.
Good morning, Kraig.
Fantastic to have you on the show. By the way, if you haven't listened to the show frequently, those out there in podcast world, fantastic is one of my favorite words. I think Michael actually counts as one of those folks that I can describe under that word. I'll explain that later. But we are on Personal Pension Radio. The podcast is all about bringing together the experts and the information that you need to actually make it all the way up your retirement mountain, save for retirement, prepare for, and most importantly, protect what you have so that you can get to and into retirement without outside forces coming in and messing with your world. So we are broadcasting now from a new location. If you haven't already heard, we're changing our location up. We had been broadcasting from Mr. Foley's van down by the river. Now we are in an undisclosed bunker somewhere in Southern California, just making sure that we keep this show moving around, keep it in different locations. It's just really important to stay mobile, right, Michael?
Yeah, that's a part of protecting your assets. You got to keep moving them around like
exactly.
The Chicago Mobsters.
Exactly. So it's tough with a bunker kind of situation or the van because the van started getting really small with everybody in the van. So we figured we might as well change it up, give it a little extra try. So if you haven't already done so, if you're a brand new listener, I oftentimes will stop before I get going on the show and send out some thanks and some love to our listeners. We have listeners now all around the world, but of course we love our listeners right here in the U.S., from New York to Florida to my home state of Maine, all the way out internationally to Spain, Australia. Hello to everyone out there listening. Thank you so much for being part of the family. If you haven't already subscribed to the show or given us a review, get on over to iTunes and leave us some love over there. We'd really appreciate it. So now let's jump right in. Back on, just a couple of shows ago on episode number 40, the episode number 40 titled, I'm Saving for Retirement, Now What? You can find that on iTunes, or you can find it at personalpensionradio.com. And it was a listener question came in saying, okay, now I've got my savings and my retirement kind of income plan in place. I've got that ready. Now what? So what I had done is go back and actually make sure to review the steps for building a secure retirement. And the most important first step is protection. It's the one step that the majority of the financial world and the financial education out there just completely misses. And I've invited Michael to be on the show because if you don't have your protection right, Michael is the guy that you don't want to meet. Michael is the guy you don't want to meet. So let me introduce Michael. Michael is a personal injury and consumer protection attorney with the Roberts Law Firm here in Southern California. And Michael, maybe we give you a little bit of time to introduce yourself, kind of tell us about your professional background, and then I'll dive in and ask you a little more personal to give us some the softer side of Michael.
Okay, sure, Kraig. Well, I am a personal injury attorney, so what that means is my clients have had a dramatic altering in their lives. That can be someone has lost their life and a family has been turned upside down. A father that provides for his family is gone. The family doesn't know what to do. Their lives have been ruined, and they need help. And that's where I come in to help them. Someone who has been in a car collision, who has a broken leg, who needs surgery on their leg, who's going to be out of work for a year, who doesn't know how to provide for their kids, that's the person that I'm there to help. These people need help because their lives have been turned upside down, and I come in to help them. A lot of my clients are injured in car collisions. Some are injured in premises liability cases, meaning slip and fall in a store, or somebody did something on property that was dangerous, and I come in to help. And what that means is I'm looking for someone to compensate my client for what's happened in their lives.
Right. See, therein lies the thing. So therein lies the big issue. When I talked about protection, and we're all about protection first in building a strategy to save and plan for retirement, that is the key here, that if you don't have your protection right, bad things happen. Either bad things happen to you personally, or bad things happen where you have unfortunately injured someone or caused someone else loss, and you end up facing someone like Michael in a situation where they are charged with, Michael being charged with now acting on behalf of someone seeking restitution, seeking to be made whole again. Fair to say?
Fair to say. And what I do is I look everywhere I can. I start from the top. I go to the bottom. I look under every single rock that there is. My job is to find out what is going to make my client whole. Oftentimes, what I find is that there isn't enough money. So I look and I look and I look until I find a source of compensation.
Right.
Now, what that means for your clients, Kraig, is if they have built up a castle in retirement, if they've listened to your advice, if they've worked with you and they've followed your steps, and now they have this retirement account, they have this money that's going to pay them for the rest of their lives, I'm going to see that as someone that's going to be able to adequately compensate my client. So they really have to have something to protect themselves when something happens, and now they're on the hook for the negligence of others, the negligence of themselves, the negligence of their family members, maybe their kids.
Oh no! Don't bring up the kids. I'm kind of. That's one of the reasons I'm really glad. I think one of the reasons I'm glad my daughter didn't bring her car to college. At least one less liability out there driving around on four wheels, right?
It's very true, and liability can happen, anywhere. People think it won't happen to me. I'm a good driver. I pay attention, but you know what? It can happen to anyone, especially in a day and age where it's illegal to use your cell phone while driving.
Right.
And your cell phone has everything on it. It has Google Maps. It has Facebook. It has Instagram, Twitter. People are on these phones all the time. They're getting text messages. And you don't have to be a bad person to look down at your cell phone, read a text message from your spouse, fail to see a red light, and slam into a family of four, injuring several, maybe killing somebody. And now you've committed an act which has caused another family significant harm.
Right.
You're not protected in that.
Exactly. And I've seen it. Both of us. An interesting fact, as I kind of bring it back to making sure that I get to know Michael a bit more, and make sure everybody in the audience gets to know Michael. Michael and I have some interesting similarities. As far as family, we both found out that our dads were police officers, and my dad was a police officer back east. Michael's dad was a police officer out here in California. So we both have this history of seeing the world from the side of the table, from that perspective of the police officer, right?
Yeah, my dad did 35 years at the Palm Springs Police Department before retiring back in 2007. So he... and I grew up with it. Him and his friends were all police officers. It's a unique perspective growing up as a cop's kid, as you know, Kraig.
Oh no, definitely. Now, Michael actually has an interesting story that he threw out just a hook when we were preparing for the show. Something about you actually conducting a traffic stop on your own when you were slightly underage.
Well, yeah, actually, and I would challenge someone to let me know that this is not a world record, but I think I hold the world record for conducting an independent traffic stop at the age of 8. I don't think anyone's done it younger than me. So what happened was my dad was working in the city of Palm Springs, and we lived in the city, and he would come home for dinner and have dinner with the family and then go back out on patrol. So right before he would go back out on patrol, I would make it a habit of running outside jumping in his police car and turning on the lights because I thought that was so much fun. And, this is back in many years ago. Now an officer would probably get in deep trouble for doing something like that. But at this time, it was a little bit less scrutiny on police officers. So I do that all the time. On this particular occasion, I jumped in the car and I saw a Lincoln Town Car starting to drive by, back in the distance. And I thought, I wonder if they'll pull over. So right as they went to the side of the car, they're now parallel with the police car. I turned those lights on. And sure enough, that Lincoln Town Car pulled over right in front of the police car. So I successfully pulled over the car. My dad was nowhere to be found. He was still in the house. And then I panicked, and I realized what I had done. And I freaked out. I turned off the lights. I locked the doors, and I hit on the floorboard. So I just waited there. And this town car, it seemed like to me, would not leave. It was parked there for it seemed like an eternity. I kept peeking up to see if it was gone, and it would just sit there. So finally, they slowly rolled away and took off. And then I walked back in the house, didn't say a word to my dad, and ultimately I confessed because I felt bad. I thought I'd done something wrong, but so I think that's a world record. Do you know anybody who's done it younger than me?
No. You know what? I don't think anybody's done it younger than you. And it would have been exciting to hear, like perhaps a felony stop, maybe, going after it. But I'll give you credit. I think we should actually document that now that we have out there in the airwaves. Anybody who's got a younger felony traffic stop, because I know I don't. I just simply got in trouble for moving the car. Wasn't supposed to actually be moving the cruiser. So at a young age.
Well, and I would like to find someone out there telling that time, that they got pulled over by the ghost police officer that never came out of the car.
Oh, that's true.
What do you think was going through their minds? They pull over like a good citizen and nobody ever gets out. And, that's got to be an odd experience as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's right. So if anybody out there, again, listening, knows that person who's told the story of being pulled over, it was in Palm Springs, yes?
That's right. Palm Springs back in the 80s.
Gotcha. Palm Springs back in the 80s. Michael would like to apologize and buy you dinner. So speaking of family, just tell us, it sounds like you were born out in Palm Springs. You're a California guy, is that right?
Yeah, born and raised in Palm Springs. Went to L.A. for college, went to UCLA, so I've lived in Southern California my whole life, and then relocated out to Orange County about 5 years ago, and I've loved it ever since. I live close to the water. I love to be close to the water, so I'm never going to leave now, but I've got family still in Riverside County. I'm back there all the time, and we have an office in Riverside County as well as Newport Beach.
Gotcha. And you said you actually went to UCLA. I hear they have a very good badminton team.
We are known for our badminton, absolutely. That's the one thing that keeps UCLA on the radar.
Absolutely. Now, you actually had shared a favorite quote, and I don't know if, let's see, the favorite quote you actually shared from John Wooden, right? Yeah. And he's a fantastic badminton coach, right? It says, never mistake activity for achievement. Why did that come to your mind when you said, when I asked you for a favorite quote?
Well, my experience is living in the United States and being in the business world. It is busy. Life is busy, and it's tough to keep up. And I can find myself go through an entire day and feel like I was busy, and at the end of the day, feel like I didn't accomplish anything. So it's really a quote to help motivate me to be efficient and effective. So in my life, in my business, I keep lists of things, and I cross things off of lists because I can keep track of my achieving things and being efficient. Otherwise, I just feel like I'm being active, and I'm never doing anything. So it just helps me feel like I'm more efficient and I'm more effective, and it helps me achieve my competitive greatness. And I also have a John Wooden quote here, or the Pyramid of Success, signed by John Wooden. It's hanging on my wall in my office. I look at it every day. John Wooden's one of the most inspirational characters in my life that I have listened to and read his book. So
yes.
Yeah, that badminton coach, he's got it all.
That's awesome. No, that's fantastic. And that actually really goes to kind of bring us back around to the topic at hand. That activity for achievement could also be, I think, modified a bit, that the idea of listening to this podcast, thinking about protection and, oh yeah, ho-hum, I'll take care of it. You actually need to go do this stuff. So we're going to get into some pretty serious topics here as it relates to protection and the goods and bads of doing it right or not doing it all, from the perspective of an attorney that goes after people and protects people in the event of something bad happen, where the protection conversation comes up. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to start out by asking the question of Michael, give me an idea of some of the risks that need protection from, what can harm you when you're negligent? If I think about it and you look at it and say, do you have to be a bad person to get in trouble?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. If you have a car, if you have anyone else driving a car that you own, if you own a piece of property, if you are maintaining or controlling a piece of property, meaning renting, if you are running a business, if you have an employee, if you have people working for you that you think are independent contractors but may not be, you might be on the hook at some point for their mistake or a mistake that you make. So virtually anybody with a small amount of assets is going to potentially be on the hook when there is a mistake that is made by somebody. So the thing that I'm always looking for is who's going to compensate my client. And if you have those assets, you're going to have a target on your back. Now, I'm not here to go destroy someone's life by taking all their assets. I don't want to do that.
Not at all.
But my clients' lives have already been destroyed. So I'm trying to help them. And the way that I can help them, their lives have already been destroyed, and without destroying another life, is by pursuing insurance money. So I love to do that because I'm able to go after an insurance company, which I don't really feel that bad about doing. And
so you don't feel bad about going after State Farm or some other insurance?
Not at all. And some of the way they treat me sometimes, it makes me feel good to go after them. So I don't feel bad about it, and I'm also able to help my clients. But the risks are out there. If you have any assets, there's a risk that you're going to at one point be on the hook for a slip and fall, for a dangerous condition on the land. If you have a tree, look at your tree branches. Should you know that these are dangerous tree branches that can fall on somebody and hurt them? These cases happen sometimes.
Right. That's interesting that you say that. And one of the questions I had is, when you look at this, what can actually harm you out there as a homeowner, as just a person, heading off to work or owning a house, for example? And before I forget, I need to make sure that everybody has a perspective on today's conversation, because oftentimes I've heard people describe attorneys, for example, in Michael's profession, oh, those guys are the sharks. They're coming after me. Those guys are the bad guys. Well, if you were on the other end of this type of a conversation where somebody ran into you or someone hurt one of your kids or something happened, you would be really, really glad to have Michael Jeandron on your side, fighting for your family and fighting for you. That's the whole point. So this is not meant to be a negative as it relates to attorneys and in this conversation. It's really all about just highlighting how important it is to make sure that your protection is right.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, everybody hates a lawsuit until it's their spouse that has been killed as the result of a drunk driver. Or everyone hates a lawsuit until it's their child that has been paralyzed by someone who is texting and driving. Then all of a sudden, they're a champion for it. So,
Right.
And it's just, circumstances that you experience have a way of changing your perspective. And my perspective has been altered because I'm dealing with these families who've had their lives altered every day. And I know what it means for them to struggle to get out of bed, to find a way to get their kids to school, to find a way to put food on the table. I know it's a struggle for them. So it's not just some, shark lawyer out there trying to get money. It's actually a process by which families need help. People need help. And, there are some lawsuits that I look at and I think those are silly. But those are few and far between, because if you really get to know who is suing and why, you'll usually find a story that'll just make you want to cry. And,
right. It really just impassions you to, drives that passion to help the next person. And that's what drives me in this conversation, that I have seen it personally I've seen it on both sides of the table, in family and with my clients. And I've seen it where protection has been in place correctly. And then I've seen it where protection wasn't in place, and it's heart-wrenching. So when I look at this, I want to maybe take one of these areas and I want to ask you for some detail there. So a lot of the members of our audience, they're growing a family, they're working towards retirement, they're busy, just like the John Wooden quote, right? Activity for achievement, and they've got kids. So what are some of the risks and some of the things that you see out there, with your kids out there in the world? It's not always them driving a car, is it?
Right. It's anything. I mean, anything your kid's doing out there can potentially create liability if you're providing them with transportation, or if they're still relying upon you. I mean, you have to be really careful, and you have to have adequate protection. And one of the things I always recommend is, for protecting your own family, is to buy good uninsured and underinsured motorist coverage, because that doesn't just protect you against a lawsuit. That protects you if you ever get injured, or if one of your family members ever gets injured. So the way UM, or uninsured motorist, works is there's a lot of uninsured motorists out there. And if one of those people runs into you and hurts you, let's say you're out of work for a year, your own insurance policy that you purchased will compensate you up to the policy limit that you purchased. So I always advise people to purchase the maximum that they can for UM, because that's for you.
No doubt.
I have people who go out and purchase a $250,000 policy for liability, meaning if they harm somebody, their insurance will pay the person they harmed, but they only purchase like $30,000 for themselves. And I say, why? Why is it okay for the person that you harm to get up to $250,000, but if you're harmed or your family's harmed, you only bought $30,000 worth of insurance? That makes no sense. If it's good for the person you're harming, it should be good enough for you.
Exactly. And we have said that here, and it's so great to actually hear you say it from the legal perspective on the other side of the conversation. We can't agree more that so many times, I think both of us have been in a situation where, we have somebody come in to see us, and they have tremendous assets, tremendous benefits, and they say, we're fine. And they drive in with the cheapest car insurance or home insurance that they could get, and they have virtually no liability protection, and they're just a sitting duck.
Absolutely. It's a terrible idea. If you have assets, you need to not just purchase car insurance and a homeowner's insurance policy, but you really need to have an umbrella policy that is above all of those. And I have examples, but an umbrella policy only kicks in after the underlying policy is paid out.
Right.
So because of that, they're not often used, which means they're not that expensive. It's not that expensive to get a $3 million umbrella policy on top of a $250,000 underlying automobile policy.
No,
So
it's probably the least expensive protection that you can find in the entire insurance world, right?
Oh my gosh, and then the benefit of it is just incredible, because now you're protected for up to $3.25 million of harm.
It can be tremendous.
It's tremendous. If I were to, I just settled a case against a woman who hit my client, who was a postman crossing the street.
Oh, wow.
She had a $250,000 policy. That was insufficient to cover him. This woman had some significant assets. She had a beautiful house in Pasadena. She was actually in her 80s, but she'd worked her whole life. She was a widow, and her husband had left her a lot of money. And, my client was just devastated by this incident, though. Sure enough, she had a $3 million umbrella policy, and because of that, we were able to settle the case. We got our client enough money to pay all of his medical bills, to provide for his lost income, and give him a little extra to be able to live on
right,
for the rest
that's
of his
great.
life. And this woman didn't have to pay a dime out of her pocket other than her insurance premiums.
And she didn't have to be, and at 80 years old, she did not have to be financially devastated at the later end of her life.
Exactly. And then I didn't have to go even think about whether I need to go execute an order to try and get some property of hers to compensate my client. It didn't have to even cross my mind, because the insurance was there. It was sufficient to compensate my client. And she's now living her life, going out and playing bingo, and this is behind her.
Right. And see, that leads to a question I had, that from the lawyer, from the attorney's perspective, personal injury, consumer protection attorney perspective, how does the presence of proper insurance and protection, how does that change things as far as the process after an incident? Like with insurance versus without insurance, court versus not going to court.
It changes the analysis entirely. When you're dealing with an insurance company, you know that the insurance company's big, and ultimately all of your efforts are going to be going towards getting an insurance company to compensate your client. And if you get a judgment against them, you're going to be able to enforce it, and they're going to be able to afford to pay it. Going against an individual, you have to hire an investigator to do an asset check. You have to find out if they have any money, find out if they were working at the time of the collision. You have to find out where their property is. And if you do get a judgment against them, most people don't just have that much money liquid, ready to go. You're going to have to fight them to try and get these assets sold off. It's just a huge hassle.
Yeah, so that's actually a great point that you make there, that to force the sale of assets, to go after wages, those kind of things don't come up when you have proper insurance. Is that right?
That's right. And I'll tell you this, Kraig, I don't want to do that stuff. It doesn't give any personal injury lawyer joy to have to look into an individual's personal finances. It's like a wrong that is remedied by more wrong, and it doesn't make anyone happy to do that. But it's my job to advocate for my clients. And if they need compensation, if they're left with needing a nurse round the clock and there's no one to pay for it, I'm going to advocate for them. I'm going to zealously try and go out there and find compensation, even if that means we're going after an individual's assets.
Right.
But,
it
doesn't give anyone joy.
No, not at all. And the other piece is that when you have proper protection, proper insurance, you actually have your own legal team in the form of the insurance company's lawyers on your side as well, right?
Absolutely. So if you're being sought and an insurance policy is on the hook for the damages, the insurance company is going to appoint you a lawyer, and they're going to fight your claim from beginning to end. And you're never going to have to pay that lawyer out of your own pocket. And I deal with these lawyers every single day. State Farm has in-house counsel. Farmers has in-house counsel. Every one of them. Mercury Insurance we deal with all the time. Allstate. I mean, they're qualified lawyers. They know how to handle these claims. And the client who purchased this insurance policy often gets a huge benefit when a disaster happens, because these bills for these lawyers can get really huge.
Oh, no doubt. And it must be far less emotionally devastating for both parties in these types of situations when you have the right protection in place. I mean, because we can't say that it's always, oh, that bad guy ran into my family and, it's all about what happened to my family. There are some terrible effects for the person who might have committed the wrong as well, and this must just take away so much of that emotional trauma.
Oh, absolutely. When there is adequate insurance, I can go to my client and I can tell them, you have some peace of mind. We're not pursuing a unicorn out there. We're not searching some assets we may never collect. We know that there's an insurance policy that exists that is applying to this case, and that ultimately, when we win, is going to write your check. So it brings my clients peace of mind, and I'm sure it brings the clients that are or the defense attorney's clients on the other side the peace of mind.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just a thought that came up as I was thinking about this from a perspective of what happens if you have a situation. Right. If you have a situation where you've been in a car accident or there's been some sort of an accident on your property, even if you're a renter, should you be calling your insurance company right away? Should you be calling family members? Should you go to South America and hide out? I mean, what should you be doing kind of first steps, if those kind of things happen?
Well, if my client is the one injured on property, my client's first call should be to me, not to the insurance company. Because, and it's going to sound a little cynical, but oftentimes my clients will make a statement to the insurance company that is seemingly innocuous, that ultimately they try to use against them later on to undermine their injuries or to undermine their damages. So I always tell people who are injured, you need to consult with your lawyer first, and then go ahead and give a statement to your insurance company in the presence of your lawyer. That way, if there's any confusing question or something's ambiguous, it can be clarified, and nothing's going to be used against you later on. Now, on the other side of it, if someone's been injured on your property or you've harmed somebody, you probably should report it to your insurance company right away. That should be your first call, and you should say, hey, I've been paying my premiums for the last 10 years. Something's happened. I need you guys to come in and defend me. And that's when you get the benefit of all your premiums.
Yeah, definitely. Say, hey, you guys are up. Let's go.
That's right. Time to come to bat. You've been taking my premiums with a big smile all these years, so it's time to come in for me big and make sure I get adequately defensed and make sure that if something happens where I'm on the hook for damages, you guys are writing the check.
No, that's actually a great point. Michael made a point. I wanted to make sure that everybody caught this, how important it is to contact representation if that's necessary, but contact representation like an attorney or counsel first before you speak to an insurance company. So I had a personal situation that coming into an airport exit, really late at night, I had my blinker light on for, it seemed like, maybe an eighth of a mile, a quarter of a mile, and the vehicle next to me appeared to be moving back so I could move in, and I moved over, and all of a sudden he was next to me. And there was a collision and racked up the side of my car and pulled over and exchanged information. His response when I said, you did see my blinker light for the last, quarter of a mile. And he said, that doesn't mean I have to let you in. And he had ultimately then made the mistake of not seeking counsel and said that to the insurance company interviewer. And basically,
that probably helped you.
It did actually help me quite a bit because he had essentially sped up to close the gap all of a sudden, and we had a collision. And it actually did help me in the long run as we were finishing up the claim. It didn't go against me. It really counted against him more than it might have in other situations. So nobody was injured, thankfully, but I thought that was that kind of reminded me when you said that. You really should contact counsel. You should probably be real mindful of what you say in a situation post-accident. And here's a question as it relates to property and just whether you're renting or whether you own a home. If you have friends over, and this has happened, again, I was present at a situation where this happened, and good friends all together at someone's home, and one of the children of that were attending the pool party was severely injured on the side of the pool. Now, I know these folks are friends, but what is your counsel then to the homeowner and to the parent of the injured child? I know you're friends, but you got to be really careful, don't you?
You absolutely do, and I'll answer your question after I tell you this. My managing partner recently had an event at his house down in Laguna Niguel, and he has this beautiful pool out in his backyard. We were going to have probably 20, 30 kids there, and he had an on-duty lifeguard the whole time because we're personal injury lawyers.
Yes.
And we recognize that these types of things, these dangers exist, and he didn't want to create any liability for himself by not having a lifeguard. And as a result, the party was a lot safer for the children. So these things that you do to try and prevent liability, these are things that you do that ultimately make our community safer. So what my counsel would be in this situation if there was a serious injury. Now, if someone just slips and, they get a boo-boo on their elbow, I'm going to say, no big deal. But if a kid has a traumatic brain injury where the rest of their life is going to be different, where they're going to have to relearn the alphabet, we've got a serious situation. And if there is homeowners insurance, then I'm going to argue that the homeowner's insurance policy should be pursued. And if it's my friend and I bought the homeowner's insurance policy, I'm going to say, you know what? You guys need to sue me. You guys need to sue me. You need to get my insurance policy on the hook because I feel bad for your kid, and your kid's going to need care for the rest of his or her life, and I want you to get all my insurance money. I paid the premium, so go after me. Try to establish a claim. Try to establish liability because, I want to help this kid. So, and that does happen sometimes. Sometimes people consent to going after claims and suits because they recognize that people need the money from the insurance company.
No, that's actually great. It's great advice, but you can only make that offer if you actually have adequate and bulletproof protection, because the other side of it is you're not protected well, and that good friend of yours is now forced into a position to contact Michael, and Michael is forced into a position to go after every bit of indemnification he can for his client, who used to be your best friend, kind of thing, right?
Right, and these two friends are now adverse, and it's very awkward now if there's not enough insurance, because the question is, are they going to contribute personally, voluntarily? And if not, are we going to have to sue them and compel them to provide for this long-term care? So it's very awkward, and those situations do arise, and it's just incredibly unfortunate when it all could have been prevented by buying a nice umbrella insurance policy.
No doubt. It really could. It's just simple, and yet we get busy and we confuse activity with achievement, right? We haven't actually achieved good protection if we don't go out and act on the advice. So I'm going to throw this in right now before I ask you. I just have a couple more questions, because I know that you're a personal injury attorney, but the law is a big, broad brush. I am curious what other kinds of passions you have in the law and things that you like to go after, and I think you and I share one. But I want to put this out to everybody in the audience that if you would like to have your protection reviewed, contact us on personalpensionradio.com. So Go to personalpensionradio.com, get in touch. We'll send you a secure link. You can upload all of your car insurance and home insurance and liability insurance, and we'll review it for you. Now, we don't sell car insurance or home insurance. We do this as a service to our listeners, as a service to our clients, to make sure that they are properly protected. So if you want to have your documents reviewed by someone who's an expert at it, okay, without that pressure of the car insurance person reviewing it, go to Personal Pension Radio and request that, and we will be happy to help. So, Michael, you have a particular passion on your side of the law that I think you and I share. You like to go after certain groups of people.
One of my favorite cases to pursue is a case against a drunk driver.
Yeah, definitely.
Drunk driving it angers me and it frustrates me because it's so easily preventable. Taxi cabs, Ubers, designated drivers, walking, the bus, the subway. It's so easy. There are so many alternatives out there, and it's so preventable. So when someone still chooses in 2015 to get behind the wheel drunk and then hurts my client or kills one of my client's family members, that's something I can really get behind. That's something I can really be passionate about. And at that point, I don't even mind going after personal assets.
No doubt.
I don't feel bad about that at all because it is so preventable and it's just such a stupid decision. And it happens over and over again. And I've got a lot of cases against drunk drivers where I'm just relentless. And it's something I love to do.
Now, that's where I said we share a passion for that because Michael might have the youngest police traffic stop ever, but being the son of a cop, I am proud to say that in my adult life, I have 3 felony stops for drunk driving that I have facilitated. I have not actually pulled the cars over, but I've identified them, tracked them, and brought the police right in behind them to actually effect 3 felony arrests to pull drunk drivers off the streets. And it's a big deal for me as well. I think that it's just unacceptable. You know, there's no reason for that. And if you're out there doing it, you got to watch out for both sides of it. And there's just no, like you said, Michael, just call Uber, you know?
It's so easy now, especially with Uber. And I know people have objections with Uber, and that's for another day. But it's just so easy, and there's so many options. And if you don't like Uber, take a cab. And if you don't like a cab, get a limo or get a car service.
Phone a friend.
Phone a friend. There you go.
Yeah.
I mean, it's so easy, and you just have to take a minute of your life to plan what you're going to do.
Well, now, just to kind of wrap things up today, I want to ask you, if somebody's out there that has been in a situation where they've been harmed, injured, damaged, whatever it might be, if this has happened, kind of give us an idea of how does that look when they contact you, for example, and when should they contact you, and kind of give us an idea of how that goes, and then I'd like you to share your contact information, website, and all that good stuff so that people understand if they have a question, they know where to go.
Sure. Well, people injured in car accidents, people who slip and fall in a store, people who fall downstairs because the stairs broke, people who are injured by a falling tree branch, people who crash a motorcycle because of another's, running into their lane. All of these things are people who may be seriously injured, and when they are, I'd say the more injured you are, the sooner you need to talk to a lawyer. So if you have a broken bone, if you've had a surgery, if you've got something wrong with your head, a closed head injury, these are times when you or someone on your behalf, if you do have an head injury, needs to talk to a lawyer. So the worse the injury, the sooner you need to talk to a lawyer. And if you've been if someone has been seriously injured, then I'd say you need to talk to a lawyer on day one. And that's just for your own protection because I like to think that insurance companies all behave properly and have good motives and good intents, but part of what I've experienced is realizing that insurance companies are also there to make a profit. So if
Right.
they find something that they can use against you, even sometimes if it's unfair, they may do that. So it's very important to get yourself protected by somebody who knows how to navigate through these difficult, complex legal issues without making mistakes that is ultimately going to harm your future ability to care for yourself or to care for your loved one. So the sooner, the better. My contact information, the best way to get in touch with me is through the website. It's robertslawfirm.net. We have a 24/7 online chat staff. They'll chat with you. If you've got a legal question, you can ask it. I'll get a message directly on my phone from one of our chat staff members as soon as the conversation's over, and I can give you a call.
Outstanding. And the link to that will be in the show notes for sure. Michael, really appreciate you spending time with us because the protection conversation sometimes can get very wonky when you talk about various insurances and stuff. And it was so good to have the perspective of an attorney on the other side, frankly, where listeners to this show should now not mistake activity listening to the show for achieving protection. Go get this done. Get your stuff reviewed. Make sure that your protection is right because Michael knows where you are. No.
And I want to encourage your listeners, Kraig. You've offered them a service which I think is incredibly valuable. They need to just send you their insurance policy information, share with you a little bit about their lives so that you can evaluate what are their liabilities, and then tell them, here's where you may have a deficiency. And that small piece of movement today could go a long way to protect themselves in the future, and I guarantee you they will not say, they will not regret doing it. So I'd encourage your listeners to do that. I mean, that's a great service you provide.
Now, that's an excellent way to wrap up the show, Michael. Thank you so much for that. And I think we might have you back again because the topic is very broad and there's a lot of stuff that we could definitely dig into. Those of you listening, don't forget to check out personalpensionradio.com, and you can find us on iTunes and Stitcher. You can get show notes and everything there at the website. We will talk to you again real soon. Michael, thanks for being here.
It's been a pleasure, Kraig. Thanks for the invitation, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you for listening to the Personal Pension Radio Podcast. If you missed anything during the show, that's okay. We took the notes for you. Check the show notes for links, offers, and a full transcript. And don't forget to head over to personalpensionradio.com and download your free retirement income report. While you're there, we'd appreciate some iTunes love. Please leave us a fantastic rating on iTunes by going to personalpensionradio.com/iTunes. Thanks again for listening.